Here we are in Jim Parrack's home. Jim and his wife Ciera.
Hello.
Hello.
And Scott. What's your last name, Scott?
Scott Haze.
Nice to meet you, Scott. We're going to talk about Jim's and all of your new film, Post. So let's just talk about it. First thing I wanted to ask is, where did the idea come from? What made you decide to make this film? Who wrote it? Tons of questions, but just
I'll
start.
give a short version of how we came up with it. Was I was doing that movie Battle Los Angeles. It was such a creatively disappointing experience, where all anybody thought about was money and taking whatever they could from an audience, but not giving anything in return, and not honoring the Marines or anything like that. And I thought, eventually, I just kind of had a breaking point and said, these aren't my values. I don't want to make movies out of other people's values if this is what it's going to be like. Called Ciera, said, let's make a movie. We were going to Texas for Christmas right after. I said, let's make a movie. And an idea had come to me when I was riding around on this red bicycle. I had a Marine combat uniform. And some ideas started to come together. And said, let's just do it. And she said, yeah. I told my family and called them and said, we're coming, we're going to make a movie, you guys are in it. And we did that.
So tell us about the story a little bit. What's the...
Well, I don't want to give anything away.
You won't.
So it's a story about a young woman, a dancer who lives in San Francisco, and the movie takes place. Can I say? I don't know. 8 months.
No.
So it's just her life is sort of falling apart, and she's kind of losing grip on everything. And so it begins with her in that state, and it's kind of her story of finding healing and peace. It's really vague. I just don't want to give anything away. But so I just don't want to give anything away. So you should probably.
It's a girl that something very traumatic happened to.
Okay.
And she wasn't even aware of the effects it's having on her life until the beginning of the movie.
Okay.
And then it's her journey into freedom from absolute hell, from being constrained and stuck in that trauma. The movie is the story of her finding her way out. And basically, the movie wasn't a story so much as I had some questions, like how does one get out of feeling that way? The movie I did, Battle Los Angeles, made me feel that way. Like someone had died. And my integrity died. And so I had questions on how to get out of that situation, or how does one kind of move forward, and we tried to use the movie to answer that question.
So you could argue that Post is kind of was an escape for you as well, to erase your experience, almost, or to bring you out of it.
To bring me out of it. I would say it was like, not an escape from reality, but like an escape from jail. It was like, it's the thing that broke me out of prison into the real world, I guess.
Scott, who do you play?
I play a sergeant named Scotty Folks, and kind of like the messenger of hope and faith is the way I like to look at it.
Yeah. The war hero.
So you actually wrote the screenplay, or?
Scott should answer this question.
Scott wrote the screenplay?
No, Scott didn't write the screenplay.
Screenplay?
Oh, there isn't a screenplay?
I guess the most the reason why Jim wants me to answer this is we had a discussion about this, and just doing work, and Jim does a lot of script work, he does a lot of plays, he teaches, he really gives a lot of guidance to actors at Playhouse West, and so he knows scripts really well. So when we started doing this thing, I started to realize there wasn't actually a script, but there was a lot of specific things that had to happen. And the best way I can put this, and this may sound a little odd, but there's the artist of Jay-Z, right? And Jay-Z, when he records a song, He has everything figured out in his head. He has the lyrics. He has the way that the beats should go, the essence of the scenes, the way they should look, the actions that take place, the sounds, the hi-hats, the snares, everything. It's all in his head. And he puts the best producers around him. And in this case, it's a phenomenal cast. Everybody in here knows exactly what they're doing. And the score right here is phenomenal.
Yeah.
In every scene. And he's kind of like the Jay-Z of filmmaking. And that's the best way I can put it. Because it's all there and it's all in his head. And it just comes out. And
Wow.
Yeah. You just,
So this is a very personal film. Like,
yes.
Couldn't be more personal.
right.
No, yeah. The family.
Rather than writing a script, I came up with what was going to happen.
Mhm.
And I saw it all very clearly, but I the actors were really trusting because they didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't tell them anything more than what was happening with them. That way, they didn't feel tempted to help the story along. They could just be human beings in the situation they were acting.
So the actors were free to say what they thought the character should say?
That's correct.
Wow.
But we didn't just sort of leave it open to whatever. We set up situations where my working with the actors was to get familiar with the situation that we were acting. So if there's a dance rehearsal scene, for instance, and there is, I had the girls and Ciera, part of this dance troupe in the movie, come up with the dance, come up with the choreography, and they worked on it for months, knowing that I would shoot them working on it. Now, there were pieces of information that had to happen during the scene so that the movie could move forward and be coherent. But I'm not going to tell a girl how they talk at a dance rehearsal. I don't have any idea. Now, there's a writer out there somewhere that he or she can.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. But I feel like I can help them find their way into that situation and see what they make of it from the inside. See their point of view about it and how they might be in dealing with each other in a situation like that. And I thought that might actually give some real value to the actor and let them be important instead of a prop that somebody says, now stand here and you say this and you feel this way. Well, they should tell me how they feel. They should tell the movie how they feel instead of the other way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of stuff Jim did. Jim gave me a stack of DVDs 90 days before I started filming. He said, watch all this stuff, and if you have any questions, ask me, and I would. And Jim brought in people. Like, there's this guy, Sergeant Major Deaver, and Jim met him doing...
He was a military advisor on Battle LA. Awesome guy.
Yeah, so he just the different aspects like that to make everything real and authentic and true, to really honor in the way Jim was talking about earlier, the Marines.
There was some stuff that was written.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Very little. But
Was it, as an actress, was it hard to come up with things to say? Did you ever feel like, I don't know what to say?
no, it wasn't. I didn't feel that. It was challenging when, like, I'm used to working a certain way. Like, with the script, you have it, and it kind of is a map for you, It tells you where you're going, and then you figure out why and what you feel about that, and then you go in, and so this was totally different. It was challenging in that because we would set up a situation or he would, like, just for instance, a dance rehearsal, and I'm going through these certain things emotionally, and then you just kind of have to live in the space and live in that. And so it was challenging in, like, keeping that reality alive so much and not really knowing where I was going because there was no, like, final scene that I could read and it would say this or, not so much. So it did take a lot of trust in Jim. Trust that...
Or Jay-Z.
Trust in Jay-Z.
Cheer!
Jim, a.k.a. Jay-Z.
I would have to really feel like Beyonce.
Oh, now we're cooking.
Yeah, now...
So
Now
what
this
I'm
is an
trying
interview.
to say is, as long as I trusted that I was Beyonce
Good.
and that he was Jay-Z,
Right?
Outstanding.
I couldn't make a wrong move. But, so it took a lot of trust. In his vision, that he wouldn't lead me astray. But I know Jim, and you know,
Well, I would hope so.
about as an actor, and I know that we value the same things, so I could let go and trust.
Would you say, Jim, that if you hadn't done Battle LA, that you may not have done this, or do you think it would have happened anyway?
I wouldn't have done this.
You would have done
I
something.
would have made a movie eventually.
So you have interest in being a director?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have more interest in that than acting, or would you act and direct?
Here's what I did learn is I'm not super excited about the idea of acting in whatever I'm directing. I'd rather split them up.
Okay.
It's very different. It's like, you know, and it comes from the same place. It comes from the same impulse and the same part of my heart to want to act and to want to direct. But, you know, there's more to give with directing than there is with acting. And what I mean by that is, if I'm just acting and you wrote the script and behind you is some guy with a dollar bill tattooed to his face and he thinks he knows everything, and then next to you is another guy who they hired right out of film school, the three of you think you know what I should be doing, right? And you're all wrong. And I'm not talking about me specifically. I'm talking about this relationship of a group of people and an actor. And there's very little regard for the actor in a situation like that. Now, with directing, you can do the opposite. The thing I think if I did anything right at all as a director, and I think that I did, was to put the actor first. That's how you tell your story. If you're doing television, if you're doing movies, if you're doing theater, your story gets told through the actors, not through your gear, not through not through a set of rules or something like that, but through the experiences and the interactions that the actors have. And actors are interesting creatures in that they're sensitive and they're a little self-conscious, all of us, and we want to thrive and do well. And that other way of working makes that even more difficult. It's already difficult to truly express something that's imaginary. So I tried to make it as easy for them as possible and put them first at every turn. And that felt really good.
But the story is also very important, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's something, and it depends on the story you're telling. And different people are going to have different points of view about it. To me, if the story, and by the way, they all serve the story. I never just said show up and do whatever you feel. Thank God. Whatever they were doing was because they were in the story. But if a moment came along in a take, for example, where her humanity went one way, and maybe the story's going this way, I'm not going to stop her. I'm not going to make a judgment in that moment and say, well, the story is more important than your humanity. Maybe it's not. We'll find our way back to the story and throughout the story. But I think that what happens here and here in between them is as important as the order of what happens on the page. And with a little bit of work, we can all be faithful.